Now coming to the ovary. So let's discuss the normal structure of ovary. Histologically, the ovary is a bean-shaped organ and it hangs from either tube by a mesentery. This mesentery is called as meso-ovarian. So this is not seen here. We are just seeing the cut section of an ovary. So this cut section shows the outer covering of ovary, which is called as coelomic epithelium, which is cuboidal in shape. And below this cuboidal cells will be the cortex. So this cortex is basically having multiple Graafian follicles. Graafian follicles is something which consists of a central germ cell ovum, and this germ cell is surrounded by gonadal stroma. Stroma is composed of inner granulosa cells and outer theca cells. So these all together comprises a Graafian follicle. So different stages of developing Graafian follicles will be there, and this is a mature Graafian follicle. Besides that, there will be the medulla. Okay, so this is the medulla. Medulla is primarily made up of connective tissue fibers and smooth muscle cells, which consist of numerous blood vessels, lymphatics and nerves. In addition, the medulla may contain clusters of hilous cells, which is called as hilar Leydig cells. So tumors of surface epithelium arises from the coelomic epithelium. Germ cell tumors arises from the Graafian follicle. Sex cord stromal tumors arises from the stroma. Metastatic tumors lodge over the surface of the ovary, mostly involving the coelomic epithelium. So the most important question which can be asked in the classification of ovarian tumors is classify the germ cell tumors. So among all the different classifying parts, germ cell tumors are most important, but you have to revise you have to by heart the entire classification of ovarian tumors, because it is very commonly asked question. So tumors of surface epithelium is divided into serous tumors and mucinous tumors, endometrioid tumors, clear cell tumors and Brenner tumor. Serous, mucinous, endometrioid, clear cell, Brenners. Always remember that for serous and mucinous, you should use the word cystadenoma, borderline and cystadenocarcinoma. These three things for this particular serous tumor, okay, and the same thing for mucinous tumor. So like that we can remember the classification. So serous tumors are divided into serous cystadenoma, which is benign, then borderline serous tumor, then serous cystadenocarcinoma. Then mucinous tumors are divided into mucinous cystadenoma, borderline mucinous tumor, mucinous cystadenocarcinoma. Endometrioid tumors, clear cell tumors and Brenner's tumors are other epithelial tumors, surface epithelial tumors. Now germ cell tumors are very important. It can be asked for 2 marks. So you have to classify it into 5 types: teratomas, dysgerminomas, endodermal sinus tumor, or it is also called as yolk sac tumor most commonly, choriocarcinoma, and other tumors like embryonal carcinoma, polyembryoma, mixed germ cell tumors. So benign the teratomas are classified into benign or mature or adult teratoma, malignant or immature teratoma, and monodermal or specialized teratoma. Benign teratoma is again classified into benign cystic teratoma, benign solid teratoma, and monodermal or specialized teratoma is classified into struma ovary and carcinoid tumor. So we have completed the classification of tumors of surface epithelium and germ cell tumors. Now the third category is sex cord stromal tumor, which comprises of 5 to 10%. So majority is what? Surface epithelial tumors, which is 60 to 70%. Sexcott stromal tumor. So if you remember, what is the stroma composed of? Granulosa and theca cells, okay, and hilar Leydig cells, okay. So granulosa theca cell tumor divided into granulosa cell tumor, thecoma, fibroma. Then Sertoli Leydig cell tumor, which is androblastoma and arenoblastoma, gynandroblastoma. Miscellaneous tumors are lipid cell tumor and gonadoblastoma, and metastatic tumors of ovary, which comprise of 5%, is Krukenberg's tumor. Krukenberg's tumor is also very frequently asked question. So this ovarian tumors broadly majority are surface epithelial tumors. So when we consider other tumors like Sexcott stromal, germ cell tumors and combined tumors, we'll try to see the origin of the tumors. So among these, germ cell tumors have origin from activated germ cells which become malignant and become dysgerminoma. So this is one cell type becoming a malignant germ cell. But if you have a totipotent cell, if the germ cell tumor arises from a totipotent cell which can differentiate into any tissue, then it is an embryonal carcinoma. So 40% of the germ cell tumors are embryonal carcinomas. Now, embryonal carcinomas, suppose embryonal carcinoma doesn't occur and totipotent cells divide into extra embryonic tissue and embryonic tissue. So if the tumor arises from the extra embryonic tissue, then yolk sac tumor, which is a rare tumor, and choriocarcinoma, which is again a rare tumor. These two are rare tumors which arises from extra embryonic tissue. If the totipotent cells divide into embryonic layers like ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, and a tumor develops involving all the three layers of the embryonic layers, then it is called as teratoma. So we first start with the surface epithelial tumor, which is a serous tumor of ovary. So 20% of all the ovarian tumors and 40% of all the malignant ovarian tumors are serous tumor of ovary. The serous tumors are grossly large in shape and they have a clear appearance. On cut section, the fluid is watery, serous fluid, and predominantly the entire ovary will become a cystic mass. This cystic mass may range up to 5 cm in diameter. About 60% of the serous tumors are benign, 15% are borderline, 25% are malignant. 2nd to 5th decades of life is the most common age group which is involved. And when coming to the origin of the tumors, serous tumors arises from the metaplasia from the coelomic epithelium or mesothelium, which differentiates along tubal type of epithelium. So when you take the gross, the benign, borderline and malignant differ from each other, but all are large, that is above 5 cm in diameter, and spherical masses. Small masses are generally unilocular. So this is very important, uniloculation. What do you mean by unilocular? Unilocular means a single cavity will be there. Okay, a single cavity will be there without any septations. Okay, so it will be all empty. Then small masses are generally unilocular, while the larger cystic are multiloculated, similar to mucinous variety. So most commonly, if the ovary has any septations and if it is divided into multiloculated areas, then it is mostly mucinous cystadenoma, if not serous. So it differs from the mucinous because it contains serous fluid rather than viscid fluid of mucinous tumors. Malignant serous tumors may have solid areas in the cystic mass. Exophytic as well as intracystic papillary projections may be present in all the grades of serous tumors, but it is most frequently found in the malignant tumors. So let's see the gross here. So here we are seeing a cystic mass which has been cut open. The fluid has already been drained and you can see the pearly white appearance or transparent appearance of the cyst wall, which is very thin, and in the cut section we can see some papillary projection. This is a unilocular cystic mass with a papillary projection, intracystic papillary projections is there. This papillary projection is mostly seen in malignant types. So when we try to see the histology of the serous cystadenoma, what do we see? So if it is a benign, we just see that the cyst wall is lined by low columnar epithelium, which is sometimes ciliated and resembles tubal epithelium. Sometimes papillae can also be found. In borderline, important is layering. So these cells will layer over each other. Okay, these low columnar cells will form layers. That's called as stratification. Then it is called as borderline serous tumor. There is detachment of cell clusters from the site of origin, and moderate features of malignancy can be present in borderline tumor, but there is absence of invasion in the stroma. So when do you call it as a carcinoma? So carcinoma means all the malignant features like invasion and atypia of the cells will also be highlighted here. So first of all is the multi-layered malignant cells. So what are the atypical features? Loss of polarity, presence of solid sheets of anaplastic cells, and definite evidence of stromal invasion. Papillae formations is more frequent in malignant variety, and sometimes we see the psammoma bodies. So this is how, now you will understand better that suppose if this is the cyst wall and we are seeing a papillae from the cyst wall, this papillae will still be lined by a low columnar epithelium, single layer, and the stroma is there with few capillaries. Now in borderline there will be stratification, that is layering. The cells will be lying in layers over each other. Because of this stratification, we can say, and some mild atypia, cellular atypia will be there, but the stroma is not invaded by these cells. It is still, the basement membrane is still intact. But in a malignant type, you can see that some cells are invading the stroma here. That's called a stromal invasion. The cells are again present in multi-layers and they are highly atypical. So highly atypical means you can see that this is a basally located nucleus here. Okay, and here you can see that the NC ratio of these cells is very high. So these are anaplastic cells. So this is how benign, borderline and malignant serous tumors will look like. So in examination, this is the diagrammatic representation of the serous tumors. You can also draw this picture showing a malignant papillary serous cystadenocarcinoma of the ovary with multiple papillary projection with fibrovascular pores here, and this is invading the stroma. Suppose this smooth muscles is nothing but stroma, so this is invading the stroma in the form of masses, and these cells are having highly atypical shapes and sizes of the nucleus, and the basophilic structures here are psammoma bodies. So psammoma bodies are also very important feature of papillary serous cystadenocarcinoma of ovary, but it is not the only tumor which will show psammoma bodies. Like psammoma bodies can also be seen in, where else can you see? So psammoma bodies can be seen in various other cancers as well. It is not just limited to papillary serous cystadenocarcinoma of the ovary. So when we can list them, it is seen in, you can see that in meningioma, you can see psammoma bodies in papillary carcinoma of the thyroid, you can see in adenocarcinoma of lung, then papillary serous carcinoma of ovary, and papillary serous carcinoma of the endometrium. These are the tumors which will show psammoma bodies. Coming to mucinous tumors of ovary, over 80% are benign and 10 to 15% are borderline mucinous tumors. 5 to 10% are malignant. Most commonly, the mucinous tumors are unilateral. These predominantly cystic tumors contain mucin. So, mucin is mostly thick material which is previously described as pseudomucin. It is associated with mucinous ascites termed pseudomyxoma peritonei. It happens in second and fifth decades of life, similar to the age groups of serous tumors above the age of 40 years. So from where does this mucinous tumor arises? So histogenesis is traced in line with that of serous tumors, that is metaplasia of the coelomic epithelium. So this metaplasia, the coelomic epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, converts into what in metaplasia? So this converts into, you can recollect the endocervical lining, which is mucinous type. So this metaplasia of cuboidal epithelium into endocervical type or intestinal type lead to mucinous tumors of ovary. Grossly, the mucinous tumors are much larger than the serous tumors, and they have a smooth surface on the cyst wall, and it will have multiloculation on cut section, and it will drain thick viscid gelatinous fluid. Benign tumors generally have thin wall and septa dividing the loculi. The loculi are thin and often translucent, but malignant varieties usually have thickened areas. Histologically, the most distinctive feature is characteristically tall columnar non-ciliated epithelium lining the loculi. So these columnar cells mostly are of mucinous type. So as in serous tumor of the ovary, we had divided into cystadenoma, borderline and cystadenocarcinoma. Here also mucinous tumors were divided on the same manner, like if they are arranged in a single layer of mucinous cells, then it is mucinous cystadenoma. If there is any stratification, so here borderline atypical proliferating mucinous tumors is identified by the same histological criteria as for borderline serous tumor, that is stratification of typical epithelium without stromal invasion. Then mucinous cystadenocarcinoma also same. So here solid sheets of papillary formation or adenomatous formation and infiltration into the stroma with or without pools of mucin accounts for mucinous cystadenocarcinoma. So this is the gross feature, showing a very large so this is the loculation which I was talking about. The septas divided into different small pockets, that's called as multiloculation. So cut surface shows a very large multilocular cyst without papillae. So this is a multilocular cyst. Okay, there is no papillae here, and the fluid present is mostly thick viscid fluid. So this is the diagram which we need to draw in exams. So these are the pool of mucin, and if you take a cut section of the wall, then you can see that the wall is lined by columnar mucinous epithelium, and the stroma shows invasion. So this is a benign mucinous cystadenoma. Why are we saying benign? Because there is no stratification here. This looks like invasion, but it's not invasion, because sometimes glands are also present in the stroma. Seeing the nuclear features of the cell, we can identify whether it is benign or malignant. Moreover, there is no stratification or layering of cells, so it is mostly single layer. So it is definitely a benign mucinous cystadenoma. Teratomas are tumor composed of different types of tissue derived from 3 germ layers, ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, in different combination. Teratomas are divided into 3 types: mature, immature, monodermal or highly specialized teratomas. The mature benign teratoma or dermoid cyst is more frequently present in young women during their active reproductive life. The tumor is bilateral in 10% of the cases. Grossly, if you see a teratoma, it is a unilocular cyst 10 to 15 cm in diameter. Unilocular means a single cavity will be there, but it will be lined by skin. On cut section, the cyst is filled with paste-like material. So usually in dermoid cyst, or you can see sebaceous cyst, there will be sebaceous secretion. Mostly whenever there is a skin lining with the nexus of the skin, there will be secretions from the skin. So that will look like a paste-like sebaceous secretion, and desquamated keratin material admixed with masses of hair will be present, and the cyst wall is thin and opaque grey-white. Microscopically, the most prominent feature is the lining of the cyst wall is by stratified squamous epithelium. So suppose this is a cyst wall. Here the cyst wall is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. So you can see the stratified squamous epithelium along with keratin layer here. And just beneath the epithelium you see different structures. You can see some glands. You can see some glands here, and you can see that it is also lined by some columnar epithelium here, and representing some intestinal epithelium, and then there's a part of cartilage here along with the adipose tissue. So stratified squamous epithelium arises from the ectoderm. The glands and the intestinal type of epithelium arises from the endoderm, and cartilage again arises, cartilage in adipose tissue, and the muscle tissue, smooth muscle cells, arises from the mesoderm. So as it contains tissues derived from different germ layers, it is called as a teratoma. So endodermal in origin is neural tissue. Ectodermal in origin is neural tissue and retina. Endodermal is bronchus, intestinal epithelium, salivary gland, pancreas and thyroid tissue. Mesodermal is cartilage, bone, tooth, smooth muscle. One person develops squamous cell carcinoma in the teratoma. Dysgerminoma is a ovarian counterpart of seminoma. So this comes under germ cells again, germ cell tumor. So second to third decades of life is the most common age presentation, and they are mostly 10% are mostly bilateral, mostly they are unilateral. About 10% of patients with dysgerminoma have elevated HCG levels. Okay, so HCG is important here. All dysgerminomas are malignant and are extremely radiosensitive. So if there is a dysgerminoma occurring in a female, then there are more chances of good prognosis with the treatment of radiotherapy. Grossly dysgerminomas is a solid mass of varying size, and cut section is grey-white to pink, lobulated, soft and fleshy with foci of hemorrhage and necrosis. So this has already been, the gross is already been covered in seminoma. So if you refer seminoma, it will be almost same. Microscopically, the tumor cells are arranged in diffuse sheets, islands, cords separated by scant fibrous stroma. The tumor cells are uniform appearance with large vesicular nucleus, clear cytoplasm, and this fibrous septa will be infiltrated by the lymphocytes. So tumor cells arranged in sheets and lobules divided by fibrous septa infiltrated by lymphocytes. These cells are uniform with high NC ratio, vesicular nucleus and clear cytoplasm. Granulosa cell tumor may occur at all ages. These tumors invade locally but occasionally may have more aggressive and malignant behavior. Recurrences after surgical removal are common. Most granulosa cell tumor secretes estrogen. Grossly, granulosa cell tumor is a small, solid, partly cystic and usually unilateral tumor. Cut section of the solid area is yellowish brown. Microscopically, granulosa cells. So granulosa cells, where did we study? The ovum is lined by inner granulosa cells. So in the normal granulosa cells also we have some bodies known as Karl-Exner bodies. So what are these Karl-Exner bodies? Mostly the Karl-Exner bodies are something which have a central small round mass of dense pink material surrounded by the granulosa cells. So they are different. There are multiple Karl-Exner bodies here. So when you see the proliferation of dark round cells, okay, arranged in macro follicles, trabecular bands and diffuse sheets, along with rosette-like structures called Karl-Exner bodies, then first thing which we should think about is granulosa cell tumor. Krukenberg tumor is a metastatic tumor. So from where does the metastasis is from? So it is mostly from intestinal tumors like gastric carcinoma, GIT tumors like gastric carcinoma, colon carcinoma and appendix. Sometimes from the breast also. If the metastasis lodges on the surface of the ovary, it is called as Krukenberg tumor. Grossly Krukenberg tumor forms rounded or kidney-shaped, firm, large masses on both the ovaries. Cut section shows grey white to yellow, firm, fleshy tumor and may have areas of hemorrhage and necrosis. Microscopically, it is characterized by presence of mucus-filled signet ring cells. So, signet ring cells are very important, which may lie singly or in clusters. It is accompanied by a sarcoma-like cellular proliferation of ovarian stroma. So, signet ring cells. Signet ring cells means a cell with nucleus pushed to one side and a central clear vacuolation will be there, mostly filled with mucin. In between the lobules of signet ring cells, you have smooth muscle cells, which gives with some atypical nuclei, which gives it a sarcoma-like structure. Choriocarcinoma of ovary. Primary pure non-gestational choriocarcinoma of ovary is very rare. Young girls under the age of 20 years will be mostly seen to have this tumor. Morphology wise, it is identical to gestational type of choriocarcinoma. It is more malignant than gestational choriocarcinoma because it can disseminate very fast through hematogenous spread and can spread to lungs, liver, bone and brain. The tumor marker for choriocarcinoma is HCG. So let's start the placental pathology. In placental pathology, hydatidiform mole is very important. Hydatidiform mole is defined as abnormal placenta characterized by two features. First, enlarged edematous and hydropic change of the chorionic villi, which become vesicular. So chorionic villi usually will be having a central core of blood vessels surrounded by cytotrophoblast and syncytial trophoblast. In hydatidiform mole, they will be hydropic change. So when we read about adaptations, in that we have read about hydropic change. So hydropic change is nothing but accumulation of water, which will give an edematous appearance to the tissue. So this edematous appearance of the stroma of the villi, and it will become vesicular. Vesicular means like a blister kind of thing will be there, and variable amount of trophoblastic proliferation. So around the villi, the trophoblast will be lining the villi. So syncytial trophoblast and cytotrophoblast. So there will be trophoblastic proliferation. So trophoblastic proliferation means increase in the number of the trophoblastic cells. Mostly there will be stratification. Either cytotrophoblast or syncytial trophoblast will increase, and that increase will be either at one end or it might be circumferential throughout the entire villi. So incidence of molar pregnancy is high in teenagers and in older women. Pathogenesis is hydatidiform mole may be non-invasive or invasive. Two types of non-invasive moles are distinguished: complete, which is also called as classic, and partial mole. Pathogenesis of these two forms is different. The complete mole or classic mole by cytogenetic studies has been shown to be derived from the father. So it is mostly of androgenetic origin. And this mole, that is the karyotyping of this villi, this hydatidiform mole in classic type will be having 46XX, which is normal. So either it will be 46XS or rarely 46XY. Chromosomal pattern will be there. The complete mole bears relationship to choriocarcinoma. So this complete mole frequently develops into choriocarcinoma. Partial mole is mostly a triploid. So classic mole is diploid, partial is triploid. So 69XXY or 69XXX, and rarely tetraploid. Partial mole rarely develops into choriocarcinoma. Beta HCG is the tumor marker here, so it is elevated both in blood and urine. Grossly, you can see that this is the uterus, cut section of a uterus. This is the fallopian tube openings. This is the fundal part of the myometrium, and this is the body. This is the cervix. So here the uterine cavity is dilated and it is occupied by variable size grape-like translucent cystic vesicles filled with clear fluid. There might be areas of hemorrhages in between. Diagrammatically, we should draw like this. This is a single villi. This is another villi. Okay. Normally, in a villi, there will be blood vessels to support the cytotrophoblast. But here, or to support the growing fetus. But here, there is no blood vessels, as you can see. It is just occupied by loose, pale tissue. Okay. That's called as hydropic change. So there is hydropic core of the villus, and this core is surrounded by single layer of mononucleated cytotrophoblast and multi-layer of syncytial trophoblast. So there might be increase in the number of layers, which is called as trophoblastic proliferation in the moles. So here you are seeing loose fibrous tissue loose connective tissue with hydropic change in the core of the villi. This is the villi lined by cytotrophoblast and syncytial trophoblast. Here there is proliferation of the trophoblasts. Okay. Invasive mole means it is a destructive mole, and it is also called as chorioadenoma destruens. Grossly invasive mole shows invasion of the molar tissue into uterine wall or rarely the blood vessels, and it will reach the lungs. Microscopically, the lesion is benign and identical to classic mole, but it has potential for hemorrhage. It is always associated with persistent elevation of beta HCG. So, choriocarcinoma of placenta. Choriocarcinoma is divided into two types: non-gestational, which occurs in ovary, and gestational, which occurs in the placenta. The gestational choriocarcinoma is a highly malignant and widely metastasizing tumor of trophoblast. 50% of the cases occur following hydatidiform mole, 25% follows spontaneous abortion, and 20% after an otherwise normal pregnancy. 5% develop in ectopic pregnancy. Clinically, the most common complaint is vaginal bleeding following a normal or abnormal pregnancy. The diagnosis is confirmed by demonstration of persistently high levels of beta HCG in the plasma and the urine. Widespread hematogenous metastases are early and frequent in choriocarcinoma if not treated. These are found chiefly in the lungs, vagina, brain, liver, and kidney. Grossly, the tumor appears as hemorrhagic, soft and fleshy mass, and microscopically we can see that there is no villi, but there are masses and columns of highly anaplastic and bizarre cytotrophoblast and syncytial trophoblast which are intermixed with each other. Invariable presence of hemorrhages and necrosis is seen, and invasion of underlying myometrium and other structures like blood vessels and lymphatics are also seen. The effectiveness of treatment is also monitored by serial beta HCG determination, and death from choriocarcinoma is generally due to fatal hemorrhage in the CNS or lungs or from pulmonary insufficiency. Here we are seeing a high power view of the sheets and masses of syncytial trophoblast and the cytotrophoblast showing anaplastic cells, and in between we have areas of hemorrhages. Now, when we see a comparative table between a complete mole, partial mole, and choriocarcinoma, the karyotyping of complete mole and choriocarcinoma is diploid, whereas partial mole is triploid. Clinically, The diagnosis given is molar pregnancy in complete mole and missed abortion in partial mole, and usually the diagnosis can be either in the form of abortion or ectopic pregnancy, or it might be following a normal pregnancy. There will be marked vaginal bleeding in complete mole and choriocarcinoma. Uterus size will increase drastically in complete mole and it will become small in partial mole. The serum HCG level, which is a tumor marker for the molar pregnancy as well as choriocarcinoma, is high in complete mole as well as persistently high in choriocarcinoma. In tissues, complete mole will have marked increase in HCG, whereas in choriocarcinoma there will be localized increase in HCG, mostly in the syncytial trophoblasts. Embryo is not present in choriocarcinoma and complete mole, whereas it is present in partial mole. Grossly, vesicles are seen in complete mole very prominently, and it is smaller in size and irregular in partial mole. Vesicles are not seen in choriocarcinoma. Villi are present in molar pregnancies, that is complete mole and partial mole. Villi is absent in choriocarcinoma. So that helps us in distinguishing grossly. Microscopically, if we see the villus, it will be absent in choriocarcinoma. Villi will be uniform in complete mole and variable in size in partial mole. There will be hydropic change in all the villi in complete mole. Trophoblastic proliferation will be diffuse and circumferential, and it will be present in cytotrophoblast, intermediate trophoblast and syncytial trophoblast in complete mole. Whereas in partial mole, the trophoblastic proliferation is mostly focal and it is present in syncytial trophoblasts. In choriocarcinoma, both cytotrophoblast and syncytial trophoblast are present, but they are atypical. Atypia is diffuse in complete mole and it is marked in choriocarcinoma. Blood vessels are present in partial mole and choriocarcinoma, whereas it is absent in complete mole. The choriocarcinoma may metastasize rapidly if it is not treated, and behavior wise, survival rate with chemotherapy is good for partial mole because choriocarcinoma doesn't develop, but 2% of complete mole will develop choriocarcinoma, and choriocarcinoma will have a survival rate with chemotherapy of about 70%. So that finishes our female genital tract pathology. If you have any doubts, you can revert back. Thank you.